In the ancient world, the cat was adored by diverse cultures, such as the Chinese, Egyptian, or Roman. However, around the 13th century in Europe, the animal began to lose its former status. It was usually tolerated for being useful in fighting mice, but was often not valued as a pet. A warning to those who like cats: the history of this animal in the Middle Ages is horrific. Medieval theories about cats claimed that they were cruel creatures, allies of the devil, and witches. Legends and myths about cats claimed that heretics worshipped the animal and kissed them below the tail, right in the orifice. There were rumors that witches could transform themselves into cats to bite and scratch babies. Even the Pope answered questions like, "Are cats the devil?" and "Are cats demonic creatures?" with a resounding yes, triggering centuries marked by the killing of cats. The fear of the black cat has become so ingrained in the memory that beliefs such as it being a source of bad luck continue to persist today. The ancient Egyptians revered cats. They even believed they were gods. For penalties for injuring or killing a cat were severe in ancient Egypt. They loved these animals so much that they even mummified them. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus reported that when a cat died in Egypt, all the inhabitants of a house shaved their eyebrows in a sign of deep mourning. The cats that died were embalmed and buried in sacred containers. The cat in ancient Egypt was intricately linked to the goddess Bastet, the priestess of the hearth, the home, women, and their secrets. Bastet was one of the most popular deities in Egypt because she promised peace and prosperity to her devotees of both sexes. Any man had a mother or a sister, a wife or a daughter that they cared for and protected, while at the same time wishing for a peaceful and prosperous home. That was what Bastet guaranteed. Every year, thousands of Egyptians traveled to the holy city of Bubastis to participate in the goddess's festival. Bastet and the cats were so valued that, in 525 BC, the Egyptian army surrendered to the Persians, who painted the image of Bastet on their shields and herded cats and other animals in front of the Egyptians before the city walls. The Egyptians would rather surrender than harm the cats. Cats were also popular in ancient Egypt and Rome, although not with the same status they had in ancient Egypt. The Greeks did not use cats as hunters. Instead, they domesticated weasels to control pests, but pet cats were well treated. The Romans considered the cat a symbol of independence, but all that changed in medieval Europe when cats were associated with the devil. While the ancient Romans celebrated the independence of cats, medieval Europeans were worried about it. Medieval Christians believed that God had given them dominion over the animals of the earth, but cats refused to be domesticated. The dog, man's best friend, was capable of learning to be loyal and obedient, but a cat would not act the same way, despite all the flattery. Thus, the independent character of cats caused great anxiety in medieval Europeans. In the early 15th century, Edward, Duke of York, harshly described cats. Their falseness and malice are known, but, I dare say this, if any beast has the spirit of the devil within it, it is undoubtedly the cat, both wild and domesticated. Although most of the population of medieval Europe was illiterate, this was irrelevant, since stories were mostly transmitted orally. The story that associated the cats with darkness, witchcraft, and the underworld, along with the church's efforts to demonize the values of earlier religions, ultimately condemned the cat to an inferior existence. Its association with the feminine side, inherited from Egypt, further contributed to the demonization of cats, considering that women in the early medieval ages were not viewed in the most positive way. Before the popularization of the cult of the Virgin Mary in the High Middle Ages, 1000 to 1300 AD, along with the French Romantic tradition of courtly love that elevated the status of the female sex, women were closely associated with Eve and the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. They were considered sinful by nature, lustful, and responsible for the first fall of man, as well as for all the struggles that every man had to face after Adam. The Jews, known as Christ killers throughout the Middle Ages in Europe, were associated with cats. Jews were said to worship the cat, being able to transform themselves into this animal to sneak into Christian homes and commit mischief or cast spells. It was also believed that Jews crucified cats as a way of mocking Christ's death on the cross. To the patriarchal culture of the Middle Ages, the cat was clearly the vilest creature on earth. In the 12th century, this association with the devil became even more visible. Around 1180, Walter Map explained in one of his works that during satanic rituals, the devil appears in the form of a black cat before his devotees. The worshippers turn off the lights and approach the place where they saw their master. They search for him, and when they find him, they kiss him under his tail. This text credited in the minds of medieval Europeans a long association between cats and evil. When the first major witch trials began in the 15th century, cats were accused of helping witches. Hunting cats were considered cruel animals that preyed on mice, taking pleasure from the rodent's pain. This reinforced the rumors that linked cats to the devil. Instead of lovable and helpful pets, medieval Europeans began to see cats as a symbol of pure evil. Several countries of association between cats, heretics, and witches affected European cats. In 1232, Pope Gregory IX issued a papal bull entitled Vox in Rama, declaring that cats were allies of the devil. Thus, Europeans began to massacre these animals. During the persecution of heretics and witches, millions of innocent cats may have been killed. The methods of killing cats were horrible. In Belgium, cats were thrown from bell towers. In France, they were burned at the stake. In Denmark, cats were beaten to death. A German artillery master suggested attaching rockets to cats for use in sieges. All these forms of torture against cats were considered cruel entertainment at the expense of the lives of millions of cats. You guys have seen that Woody Woodpecker episode entitled Suffering Cats, right? Well, that's not a jet on the back of a 16th century cat. It's an unusual military technique recommended by the master gunner Franz Helm of Cologne, who wrote a treatise on siege warfare in the mid-16th century. In one section of the documents, Helm suggested new methods for setting fire to an impenetrable castle or city. Helm recommended putting a lit bag of gunpowder on a cat's back. Tie the bag on the cat's back, then light it, then let the cat go, so that it runs towards the nearest castle or town. When the terrified cat hid in a barn, the rocket would set the structure on fire. Sure, the cat would die a horrible death, but Helm didn't seem to mind that. The outbreak of the Black Death after Pope Gregory IX's bull has often been attributed to a widespread massacre of cats. However, this theory is untenable, as it was just one outbreak among many. The plague was killing Europeans long before the papal bull. On the other hand, the plague of the 14th century was amplified by the high number of parasite-carrying rodents that thrived in the absence of a large cat population. The people of the Middle Ages did not know that the plague was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, present in fleas, which in turn parasited the rats. The general opinion was the same as that spread by the church. The plague had been sent by God as a punishment for sins. In this way, cats continued to be slaughtered and killed, as people continued to see them through the church's perspective as evil and worthless creatures. Cats began to be rehabilitated after the Protestant Reformation, 1517 to 1648, when the church's control over the people's lives diminished. There began to be greater freedom of thought. In the 18th century, the spirit of the Enlightenment encouraged people to keep cats as pets simply because they were a cheerful companion. This trend became more common in the Victorian era in the 19th century, where Queen Victoria returned the cat to the status the animal had in ancient Egypt. When the Rosetta Stone was deciphered in 1822, Egyptian culture was revealed to the world. Prior to this, hieroglyphics were considered merely an ornament. But after they were understood as a language, Egyptian civilization was clarified and attracted worldwide attention. Stories of amazing discoveries in ancient tombs made headlines in England and around the world. Several mentioned Bastet and the Egyptian love of cats. Queen Victoria's interest in Egypt caused her to adopt 2 blue Persians, and the monarch acquired a reputation as a breeder of show cats. Since Victoria was a popular queen, the press reported on her interests, and these hobbies began to be shared by other people who wished to have their own cats. Little by little, their image was rehabilitated. By the end of the 19th century, the medieval concept of the cat as an instrument of Satan was replaced by that of the feline friend and cherished family member, known to cat lovers today, as well as those of the ancient world.